four things right now in front of us to do with the zoning code that we have to discuss. And then we're gonna change the format this evening. And we're gonna do our work first before I open it up to public comment. And we've got four items and maybe some additional items that we're gonna work through that have to do with the zoning code. And then we'll open up the floor to public comment. Here we go. Okay, we've got a list of four things that have come up: triplexes, minimum dwelling sizes, so building height in the CBD, and home occupations.
I'm just telling you, it should be in the back.
There it is. All right, is there anything else we want to add to this list of four that we're concerned with?
I would add outdoor display of goods. Here. I would add outdoor display of goods downtown.
Sure. I'd like to add flag lots to this also. There seemed to be a lot of pushback on those. And we can use the same matrix that Beckett and Rader put together for us on these two other items. All right, the first item is triplexes. And the proposed ordinance provides an opportunity for triplexes in the RN, RW, RM, and B1 zoning districts with special approval, which requires a public hearing before the planning commission as part of the approval process. So if someone wanted to build a triplex in town, they'd have to go through the process with the planning commission and get special approval for it. We've got a couple of choices. We can allow triplexes in the RN district as a special approval use. Allow a triplex in the RW district as a special approval use. And allow a triplex in the B1 district as a special approval use. We can leave that alone, or we can make revisions. Any discussion on consideration?
When we say a special approval use, what we're saying is that this is a requirement to go, what steps does this go through? Jeff, is that something you can clarify?
Yes, so the special land use approval process that's the process that requires us when we have an application for that. We notify the property owners within 300 feet of the property.
Mhm.
We put a notice in the paper as well. And then we have that plan available for the public to come in and review prior to the meeting. And then during the course of the meeting, it is up to that applicant to demonstrate how they're meeting the 8 standards that would be required for special land use approval.
Okay.
If the planning commission feels that they have met that standard, then they can choose to approve that project. If they are convinced by people that come in with potential concerns, they could choose to adopt that and approve that project for special land use approval with conditions that might be needed.
Okay.
Or they could decide that the applicant has not met the standards and not approve the project.
And when you're talking about the special approval standards, it's a given that there are already setbacks, front, back, side that would have to be, and square footage percentages that would have to be followed as well as any additional.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
These would be standards that are in addition to that,
Okay.
yes.
Because a triplex has to meet the same size as a single family home,
Yep, they're subject to the same setbacks, they're subject to the same.
The audience, please, because we can't hear what Nancy's saying back here. We need a microphone, because nobody can hear.
We don't have a microphone, I'm sorry.
Just speak up a little bit.
Or stand up to talk.
Okay, we'll stand up. We'll stand up.
So yes, in addition to the setback standards, the maximum lot coverage standard of 40%, they have to meet the same standards as any other single family home. There's a specific criteria of 8 standards that's laid out in the zoning code. that would apply beyond those to any special land use approval process.
Can you hear me in the back if I talk this loud?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. There also is a fee connected with a special land use, correct? There's
Yeah.
a fee schedule that has to be met, and it sometimes takes several planning commission meetings, depending on it. And it's the same as any special land use, so a lot of hoops to jump through before you can build a triplex.
The triplexes would not be a by use.
By right.
Right, or by right
No.
use, correct?
Correct, it is not a by right use. By requiring special land use approval, it requires that extra effort from the property owner or applicant to come in and to do that.
And the neighbors are notified for a special land use.
Yes,
Correct. Yeah.
Are you speaking specifically to new construction or?
We're not open for public comment right now, sorry. But yes, it would be new construction.
So existing construction?
this,
So,
if I can clarify, because I think that is a good question, this would apply to any new construction for those proposed uses or a change in use of an existing building.
Thank you, John.
If you had an existing building, you couldn't, to convert it to a triplex, you would have to get a special use.
Yes, you would have to go through this process.
How much weight does the neighbor's opinion have on the planning commission? How much, sorry. Yes, how much consideration does the planning commission take when the neighbors have a say?
That's a really good question, and I think the answer is going to be dependent on how much consideration is due to those concerns based on how much those concerns relate to the 7 or 8 standards. One of the standards, for instance, is regarding pedestrian and vehicular traffic. If someone brings up a concern regarding that aspect of a project, then that's suitably a concern that needs to be weighed and there needs to be a good answer to. If someone's concern is maybe more that they disagree with the color of the paint of the proposed structure or something, then that's going to have less of an impact on consideration because it doesn't pertain to those standards.
The height restrictions on triplexes are the same as single-family dwellings in the RN under the proposal, correct?
That is correct.
35.
2 stories and 35 feet.
Right.
What
Yes.
about in the B1 district?
B1 district, if I believe if we look at the language in B1, if you're choosing to build a residential style structure, it refers you to the residential sections and they have similar standards. Yes, so 2 stories, 35 feet.
All right, is that more discussion? You ready to leave it alone, change it?
I'd leave it alone. I think there's enough safeguards to protect some of the concerns that we've heard. So I would leave it alone on all 3 of them.
I would agree with you on that. Okay, Michael? You have anything to contribute?
I would leave it as is in the RN districts, but, and obviously they're in the residential multiple district as well. But not so sure about the RW and the B1 districts, specifically the RW district, maybe the B1. RN district is expanded quite a bit. That includes most of our residential areas. With the safeguards, I think I'm comfortable with that. I don't know about the RW district though.
I would agree with that.
I have some questions about that. I think B1, our convenience business district. Also, I would consider that. I don't much have some doubts or questions about that.
And I agree, I like I like the special approvals I like the special approvals that we're talking about with the triplexes and in the RN, so I would be in favor of leaving that as it is. I share some of the concerns about the RW and the B1 districts. I'm just not clear whether we need to allow that.
I guess what I'm hearing is RN, residential neighborhood,
Yes.
we can leave that one alone. The RW, residential waterfront. Do we want to add some additional safeguards or? just not allow them? Or,
Can I just ask what your hesitation is in? Can you not hear me?
No.
I'm sorry.
To him, not-
I'm asking what the hesitation is with not allowing them in B1 and RW, just so I understand. Because RW lots are bigger. I'm looking for them, right? So that, and I'm just wondering what the reason is to not allow them, or what your concern is with allowing them there.
I guess I see, to me, there's enough differentiation between the characteristic of our RW zone, enough differentiation from our newly created RN zone that I do think a triplex would be out of character in that area. I do think they'd be okay in the B1 district. I'm more comfortable with that. But I do think that, honestly, I do think triplexes would be a bit out of character in our waterfront residential districts.
I think we're all right on the B1 to allow
I'm okay with
I'm
that.
okay with-
B1,
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
just disallowed in the waterfront. Kathy?
I guess I'm not clear what extra we needed for the RW if we wanted to have it be more than a special, what additional level is there to require other than, saying no outright.
I guess regarding the question of what additional requirements there could be,
Mhm.
you could, if you felt that just having it as a special land use wasn't enough, you could add extra requirements, more restrictive than what's in the zoning code per se. You could have larger setback requirements. You could have other specific requirements such as, let's say that one issue that you don't like about a triplex is if there were going to be multiple entrances on the same face of the building, you could maybe require that each entrance has to be in a different face. So you have one on one side of the building, one on the other, or something like that. Those are some potential types of additional things that could be added. Yeah, I don't know what else to add to that.
Okay, thanks.
We comfortable with this the special land use, or do we want to make it more difficult in the?
What you could do, if you would like, is maybe remove it in that district for now and maybe kick it back to the planning commission for them to come up with those extra standards that you might like to put in place. And they could get some feedback at that point.
Make a reasonable request?
That's fine.
You're gonna pull it out, go with a request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm understanding just by consensus here is that we're going to leave as is in the RM and RM. Remove it from the RW and B1,
Leave it alone.
Leave it B1.
leave it in B1 with consideration by the planning commission.
Leave it in RN, leave it in B1, and ask planning commission to weigh in on RW. Did you guys hear what I just said? To clarify that. Leave it in RN, leave it as it is in RN, leave it as it is in B1, and ask planning commission to weigh in on RW. Did you hear me?
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, you're welcome. It'll be yours by the end of the night. Okay.
But what about RM?
If they're allowed in RM, because that's multiple family. Is that a special land use in RM?
It
It is.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a smaller level of use in the RM district.
Right.
RM is where we intend for multiple residential projects to go. So that would be a special land use for less specified use as opposed to the bigger projects.
And RM is the trailer park or.
No.
The apartment.
Hillside, and there's very little RM in town.
And I believe that all of the RM properties are fairly well developed at this point in time.
Good. All right, so we're good on the triplexes? Nick? Is that what you need for triplexes?
Yes.
All right, you're good. Minimum dwelling size. The proposed ordinance has reduced the minimum dwelling unit size from 864 to 560, which is a match to the counties. building size. So we're reducing what we have. Little less 280 square feet. So you can go from a deluxe suite to a junior suite. If you choose to build a small house. I don't care one way or another. I don't think anyone's ever gonna build anything under the maximum of what they're allowed to build in this community. As houses get torn down, the number one question is how big of a house can I build? It's a non-issue, but people seem concerned about it.
You can't. Why change?
Why, that's fine. We don't have to change it.
Okay.
Okay, we can leave it at 860.
Yeah.
Which is still, no one's ever gonna build a 860 square foot house, but if it'll make you people sleep easier at night. We'll reduce it to 860.
May I ask a question?
You got it.
Yeah, as I understand it, 864 is the number, the amount of square feet. The amount of square footage that is allowed right now is 864, correct? And the
Correct.
new proposal is suggesting going to 560 square feet. And the basis of that was because that's what the Emmett County code is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, there's no, as I understand it, there's no particular magic number. Is there a particular basis other than one is what we have and the other one is what the county has? Jeff, to your knowledge?
Yeah, I don't know what more I could add to that, no.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
And 864 was just an arbitrary number in the old code.
I can take a guess, because a lot of communities have weird numbers like that. 864, how was the 64 important? This is just a guess. But my understanding is a lot of communities back in the 60s and 70s, when they were coming up with their minimum dwelling sizes, were trying to find a way to zone and control where modular homes and trailers could be. And so they took the size of the largest single wide trailer, 860, and they went 4 square feet larger so that they couldn't be in the residential neighborhoods. That's my guess. There's other ways to control that now. And that is just a guess.
I'm in favor of leaving it at 864. I find it highly unlikely someone would build a 560 square foot home. And if you looked at the footprint of that, it would be, what, 20 by 26 or something like that, or maybe I need to go back to school and look at my math. Obviously, in 35 years of being an educator, I didn't learn too much. I'm in favor of keeping it as it is at 8. I do think a 560 square foot home would look out of character for the other homes in the neighborhood. So I'm in favor of 864, and I think I've mentioned that a few times. When I look at neighboring cities like Boyne City and Charlevoix, theirs are in excess of 700. One is, I don't know, 800. I just don't see a reason to, I understand the simplicity of trying to mirror Emmett County just because of confusion, but on this one, I do think it's an arbitrary number, and I would like to see it maintained at 864.
I would also say 8.
Save the applause for the end of the meeting, okay? Don't want to drag this out any longer than we have.
I would also choose 864 over 560. I would entertain something if it was more like 7 or 750, but I think 560 is just not realistic. And I think leaving it as isn't gonna hurt anything.
So I think we're gonna go with 864, folks. Building height in the central business district.
You go to,
Yeah, you guys can pull that slide up for us.
page 6.
The proposed ordinance has a building height in the CBD at 42 feet. That's 2 stories with a projecting elevator, enclosed shaft, or 3 stories excluding the elevator shaft. The current code, you can build the 50 feet. So the new code is actually a reduction. And we have 2 options. We can leave it the way it is at 42 feet, or we can, on a 3rd floor, have an 8-foot setback, which would reduce that tunnel effect that we keep hearing about. People say someone's gonna buy a block of Main Street and build 40 feet straight up. And it's gonna become this dark cavern. So if you build a 3rd floor unit, it would have to set back 8 feet, which shows in the 5th or 4th diagram in the blue one, 3-story option, no roof access. And I think that is a great idea. It eliminates what we have at the corner of Bay and Gardner. Is that- Yeah, Bay and Gardner. Where you just have a flat front to the building. This would give some structure in the front. That's a nice option. And it does reduce the height in town to 42.
And it's a hard cap at 42. It's nothing on the roof above that, which is what? It's a hard cap, sorry. It's a hard cap at 42. Now we can go to 40 and even 50, but then on the top of that, there can be other things on the roof that can be seen from the street. So this means it's 42 and there's no elevator above that. There's no roof deck above it. There's no air conditioners above it. It's 42 feet. So I think it's a
That's not
clean,
true.
what's not true?
I'd like to make a
Okay.
slight correction. So
Okay.
this would be for any living space, any part of the building itself. There
Okay,
is a qualifier that's set back from the building, placed in the middle of it. You could have mechanical equipment, like your HVAC system or your air conditioning units above the, and there's a limit to, I think it's 48 inches or something that equipment would have to be. But again, set back where it's not viewable from the
okay,
street.
I stand corrected. It's not viewable from the street. Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
So anyways, I like the allow 2 stories with a projecting elevator enclosure. Or 3 stories where the 3rd story is set back 8 feet. I think that's a reasonable request. And I think that'll maintain the charm of our downtown.
My only comment or question was a clarification that something you and I discussed, Jeff, in a meeting some weeks ago. Of the existing buildings in town. The First Community Bank building is about 45 feet tall, correct?
It's probably one of the tallest ones. I don't know the exact height offhand
Okay,
right
I
now, but
believe
yes.
that's what you gave us when you had done. Essentially, that's already taller than what we're talking about for the maximum height
Yes.
of the buildings in the CBD. Okay, thank you very much.
So the only tall buildings in town would be the Cottage Company project, the bank. I guess the New York buildings over 42, depending where you measure it.
The old City Hall, and
City Hall.
believe in that same.
That's yeah, and that's, I don't even think I included the spire in that height, so.
Yeah, that's true. The church and the spire.
Yeah.
That's not in the CBD though.
Right.
Oh, there is one in there, yeah. If I strike that, reverse it.
So just to summarize this, the new zoning code that's being presented would be more restrictive than what we have at this point.
Yes.
With PDDs.
In addition, there's some architectural requirements as well that are in there, ranging from vertical lines to signage. And I think that 3rd floor setback combined with those architectural requirements for that downtown overlay, I think it really is a very good effort, I think, of maintaining the character of Main Street, our downtown area. I like it, it's good.
Okay, so I guess by consensus, we're gonna go with the second choice.
Yeah.
2 stories with an elevator, or 3 stories with an 8-foot setback. All right, moving on. Home occupations. The proposed home occupation standards are the same as the existing code, except they will not require special approval. So if you're a CPA or a seamstress, you can operate a business out of your home. Can either allow it, or we can have them seek special approval
I'll go to the administrative council.
with the administrative council, which is Jeff, Bill Mulder, and
John Michelangelo.
John, the planning guy.
Plan.
Just those 3?
I think the city manager and the city attorney are on that administrative committee as well.
Say right now, there's a fair amount of home businesses. I don't know any of them off the top of my head, but I'm sure people are operating out of their homes. Especially with remote work that's available now. I don't know if I don't feel it needs a special approval. And if they wanted to open something that was attracting cars, that's not allowed anymore.
And just to remind everybody that we do still have specific regulations and standards for a home occupation that have to be abided by,
Right.
regardless of whether it's an administrative approval or a special land use approval by the planning commission.
They still have to pull a business permit.
Merchant's license, the whole bit, there are standards, they have to be conducted inside of the building, they can't have something that's outdoors, other things like that, it's quite limiting.
Signage standards can't be a nuisance. Signage standards can't be a nuisance to the surrounding area. I brought this up, quite frankly, because my wife does operate a home occupation, a dog grooming business. And she did go through the special land use provisions. And I think it's important to have guardrails on that. I think special land use and going before planning commission might be too much, but yet having some guardrails, I think, is a good idea. I guess if I'm tutoring somebody out of my house, or I'm a seamstress and it's quiet and my neighbors don't care, that's a moral dilemma. Do I go ahead and then seek approval from the administrative review committee? I wouldn't know what to tell you, but I think for somebody like my wife's business, where, yeah, people are dropping off dogs, it's totally contained in the house, we've met those standards, but somebody looked at it, and that's why I brought it up. I think some guardrails are okay and necessary. Again, I get that if I'm teaching somebody music lessons and it's quiet and nobody really knows, and a couple of students a week or whatever, I understand why I have to go through an administrative review. But on the other hand, a home occupation can be anything, but not anything. There are some, if you go ahead and look at it, there are some restrictions of what they can be. But still, I do think it's important to have some guardrails on that and not just make it a by right thing to do with a little asterisk that says, oh, by the way, follow these 8 standards, or how many there are. So that's why I brought it up. I'm not gonna live and die on it, certainly, but, we're rule followers, and
A fee that would be involved in going through an administrative review committee versus a special use permit, or is it just paperwork?
No, there's, at an administrative level, that fee could be kept down to a minimum. Just to cover the time necessary to review that, and some of those fees are pretty minimal. To provide some background, a special land use request, the fee for that is extensive. That requires submitting it 30 days in advance of the planning commission meeting. It requires the same notice of the paper and notice of surrounding property owners, just like any other special land use. Also, back to the fee is $1,000. There is the potential that the applicant may get some of that back if we don't use all of that in covering the review and standards and whatnot. But typically that most of that is used. So it's financially a substantial step up in cost. It's also a large step up in the time requirement of having to submit that application 30 days in advance of the meetings. Depending on when they submit that, it could be almost 2 months out before they actually have their request reviewed by the planning commission.
What would be a guesstimate of a fee for administrative review? I know it's hard to say, but
Why don't I give you some examples of some other fees for other applications that we have? The merchant's license application is $100. A signage permit for putting a sign on your building is $25. A fence permit, the fee for that one is $0. And we try to keep that fee low so that people make sure to come in and deal with that, because that is something that's typically it's allowed right on the property line. So we want to make sure that there's little impact on somebody having to come in and submit that. More expensive fees would be like the submission of a zoning permit to build a structure. And that is basically 20 cents per square foot with a minimum of, I believe, 75 and a maximum of 250.
On the home occupations, are they allowed to have a sign?
They can have minimal directional signage
Right.
to indicate where they're, let's say that I have a hairdressing office in the back of my shop or something. I can have some directional signage on my home, say entrance to Jeff's barber shop around the corner. But I can't have any like signage out by the street advertising my business.
Yes, we
Hmm?
keep it as a special approval or?
Right now, it's not a special. Am I right now? It's a by right use. I mean, in the proposed code, it's a by right use. What Michael was saying was maybe thinking about taking it through the administrative review committee as opposed to a special land use. I definitely don't think it should be a special land use. I don't think that makes sense. One of my concerns with taking it through the administrative review, we have tons of them in town right now. Occupational, home occupations that people do work from home all the time. There's no way for us to monitor this, really. And I hate putting rules in place that we can't monitor. That doesn't make sense to me, but again, if everybody else thinks it should be administrative review, I can live with that. I think it's over.
But to some extent, it can be, because they still have to file paperwork that says they're operating a business.
They're supposed to.
Right, I don't think that it hurts to send it to administrative review. I don't think that it would hurt anything to add that extra, especially the businesses that might have cars coming and going once in a while.
yeah, I think if you look at home occupation under 7.2.11, if a home occupation has members of the public coming to the residence for purposes of transacting business or has signage on the residence indicating that a business is operating from the residence or involves the delivery or shipment of goods for sale or transfer beyond that customary for a residence, then such home occupation shall meet the following standards. And that's the 8.6, listed. I think if certainly if my neighbor was tutoring a few kids a week or was hemming a few dresses for people and there really wasn't coming and going, I'm not gonna turn her in. Don't tell her that. And she doesn't do that, by the way. But I understand we probably have a lot of them out there, as was mentioned, maybe a CPA that does work from his home.
What about a bigger business, like a cookie shop or a coffee shop?
That's not allowed. That's not allowed.
Sorry.
Yeah, a commercial business like that isn't allowed, it's residential. Under the new code.
It potentially could be allowed. It would have to be a very small operation. If you look at the 6 standards that are in there, the only employees can be the person running the business or, 1 or 2 relatives. It has to all be contained within. It's very limiting. Depending on the scope of someone's bakery, they might be able to run something very small and minimal out of their home. But I think it would hit a point very quickly where that they weren't capable of doing that, meeting our home occupation rules, and they would have to find a commercial location to do that in.
So they could make cookies and sell them at the harbor market, but they can't make cookies and sell them out of their house.
Maybe.
I think if they got to a point where they were having dozens of cars there every day, then they've exceeded what the home occupation is designed for.
Okay, approval or administrative review? Or-
I would be in favor of administrative review.
Yes. If we're gonna do any kind of approval, I'd be in favor of administrative.
Absolutely. I think administrative review would be good.
So we need.
Yeah, all right with that? Alright. Maintain the standard, but require review and approval by the administrative review committee.
We just. Oh, we're.
Flag lots.
Like, and outdoor display.
Outdoor displays. Outdoor displays, we allowed them during COVID. Because you couldn't go inside
We're in the CBD.
in the CBD. And the business district. Now that COVID's over, you can go inside stores again, do your shopping. I'm not a big fan of outdoor displays. I think it cheapens the downtown. It makes it look like a tourist town. But I don't think Harbor Springs is a tourist town. I think we're a resort town. And, so our planner, I believe, said we should kick this one to the DDA to get their opinion on it. So anyways, that's my opinion on outdoor displays, short and sweet.
So you wanna take them out?
Yeah.
You want
I-
to not allow them? Is that in the zoning code?
No, that's.
Not what you're saying?
I'll-
Okay.
I'll talk really quick because I brought it up. My concern is that it really clogs up the sidewalk between the benches and the bike racks and people walking and dogs and bikes and everything that's going on downtown. And so I think that it is worth kicking it back to the DDA and getting their insight and talking to the store owners. And just seeing what they have to say. I don't think we should leave it in the code just because it was something we allowed during COVID when people weren't allowed to necessarily be in the store. So I would be in favor of taking it out of the code and sending it to the DDA to get their opinion.
I don't have a strong opinion on this one, really, one way or the other. And I think having the DDA's input, though, is a valid point.
Agreed, agreed. Do we take it out of the code and kick it to the DDA for some suggestions?
So when we,
Sidewalks aren't gonna get bigger.
so when
Right.
we take it out of the code,
Why
then
is
it
it-
means code, it means it's not allowed. That's what happened, that's what it would mean, which is okay. I'm not saying yes or no. We can always do something with it later, once we get there.
If we take it out of the code, then
Then-
outdoor displays wouldn't be allowed.
Would not be allowed. If it's not mentioned in the code, then they can't do it. So then DDA can weigh in on it. We can take a look at it another time.
Another time.
I'm just clarifying what these guys are saying they want.
We could put it back in the code, or we could do a ordinance or some other.
Different.
I think that's how it got allowed, was by ordinance. During
Is
COVID.
that, are there not certain times of year or events when this is allowed
Sidewalk sale.
now?
Sidewalk sales.
Okay,
It's
has
allowed,
that changed? Does any of this change that one way or the other?
no, it's allowed all the time right now because of the code, because of COVID.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
But I would say that obviously we would want it available during sidewalk sales, but only during sidewalk sales potentially.
You can do that.
You can-
There's a way to
And
do it.
that's just council approval.
Council.
So I'm hearing we should take it out and kick it to the DDA for any changes or future plans. All right. And flag lots. We've heard a lot about flag lots. I think in the right circumstance, a flag lot would be a great idea. Is it, I think it needs to be a special approval, which I'm not sure if it's a by right now.
I don't know how you make it a special approval, because
Yeah,
you're
I'm
creating
not-
a new lot.
I'm not sure if special land use approval would be a proper path for a lot split or a land division. That I think that's generally more of the use of the property as opposed to the allowance of size. So that might not be, if there's some other types of regulations that you'd like to make sure that a flag lot would have to abide by, we could certainly come up with something to help with that. But a land use approval, I don't think would be appropriate for a land split. Is that,
Would a PUD help control it? I know it's a lot more
Yeah.
difficult to do.
yeah, we could certainly require the method of split approval or the process for approval for a flag lot and how it can be done. For instance, when with property splits, some of that language is in the city code and some is in the zoning code, really dictates more the shape of property and the sizes of them. But then the process for approval and the method of application is in the city code. And what the city code says right now is that if the number of lots being created is, I believe, 3 or less, then it's an administrative approval by the zoning administrator. If the number of lots being approved is 4 or greater, then that requires a different process for approval, which requires them to come to the planning commission, and it requires them to do it through a condominium document. So what you could do is request that the city code be amended so that if flag lots are permitted, it would amend that process that they have to go through, thus coming to the planning commission and potentially doing a condominium document for flag lots, if that's something that you would like to look into.
Is that a legal subdivision?
Isn't one of the issues, isn't one of the issues with flag lots, correct me if I'm wrong, that every lot has to have street frontage
Yes.
in our current
Yeah,
code?
the way that we have drafted the language,
Right.
each of these properties does have to have their own frontage. We're just diminishing the amount of frontage that they have connecting them to the street to less than the regular lot width. But then they wouldn't be able to build within the
Right.
flagpole portion, but then their real lot would be behind the lot in front of them. Still requiring to be the same size. This does not mean that you could take a smaller lot.
There aren't a whole lot of properties, I can't give you an exact number, but a whole lot of properties in town that would allow this anyway. It's gotta be a very deep lot because it has to be twice 132. Look, I'm looking at Jeff, right? Our lot we're proposing 52 by 132. So in order to have a flag lot, you have to have a 264-foot deep lot. There aren't very many of those in town at all. I don't really have a problem with them, with a flag lot. I think there are very few properties that are going to accommodate it. It would allow for one more lot in town. So for me, I personally don't have a problem with it.
So if I'm understanding correctly, Jeff, then if there has to be 132 times 2 deep, to be able to add the one lot, it's the width. 52 is the width.
52 times 3.
No,
52 times 2.
Let's use an example, right? Let's say that I want to try and create a flag lot.
Okay.
The minimum width for a lot is
Mhm.
52 feet,
Correct.
but the flagpole portion of it does not count towards that.
Okay.
And the minimum that flagpole portion can be is 15. So if I would need then, my property would have to be 67 feet wide
Okay.
because I have to give 15 feet away to the property that's gonna be behind me.
Okay.
Then also, if my lot is going to be the minimum of 52, in order to have the minimum square footage for a lot, it's 6,800 and something, which
Mhm.
brings us out to 52 by 132 feet deep.
Right.
So the lot behind me is then going to be that 67 feet wide or possibly wider, but it also needs to have that 6,800 and something. So it's gonna be then 67 by,
Right.
let's say, another 132 feet deep.
Okay.
maybe a little bit less because they have a little bit more width. But it's going to have to be a substantially, at minimum 67 feet in width for the parent
Yeah.
parcel that creates these.
Right,
Really, I think you're looking at a parcel that's less than about 0.4 acres is not going to meet the requirement. We
that's,
also have a limitation in the code that you can't stack flag lots more than 2 deep behind the parcel in front.
right.
So if you're going even wider to a third,
I was gonna say, so if you were doing a third, then it would have to be to 52 plus 15 plus another 15.
which would take you to 82 feet, but then
Okay.
also you would have to have the depth to be able to pull that off,
Exactly,
which takes you up to, I think it's about 0.75 acres
okay,
of a minimum site to be able to even think about doing this.
okay,
Also, you have to look at a parcel, if they already have a substantial home, nobody's gonna tear down a $500,000 home so that they can get an additional $100,000 lot that they would sell off. I don't think many people are gonna do that.
mhm,
That, maybe they would, but I don't, I think that would be rare. And most properties in Harbor Springs are encumbered by existing homes. I think it would be a rare occurrence that we would see somebody use this method to split property. And a lot of the properties that would meet the size requirement to be able to split this way are probably going to use a different method because it's going to fit that property better. Most property owners, I think if they're looking at building something bigger, they're gonna maybe put in a road or do whatever they can to make it really look nice. This is a suitable option for someone if they don't have enough property where they can put in a road to provide access and everybody has frontage on the road. But it's certainly a larger parcel than what they would want to use for a single family home.
okay. And currently, what is the zoning on for that kind of,
We're not allowed.
it's not
Like,
allowed,
they're not.
so you can't do this kind of a lot split. You might be
Right.
able to do other kinds of lot splits, but not this particular one
Correct.
under the
So
current
this
code.
would be a new.
It's just an option for.
It's a new option
Yeah.
for new properties. Okay, thank you.
It's not that easy to do. It
Right.
won't be that much.
Scratch flag.
Louder.
I think that I would say because there aren't really that many, and if somebody really wanted to do it, they could do a planned development. I would say, I think I would say take them out and let somebody do the planned development if that's what they choose to do. I think that there's so much hesitation around them that I don't feel the need to fight for them.
Again, there's so very few, I think, especially when you consider if somebody has a substantial home on their lot, which we don't have a lot of empty lots. The ones that we do have, I don't know how many there are that really have the depth and the width to flag lot or two. So I'm not opposed to them. However, it just seems like a instance which is gonna be so rarely used that, but I agree, if someone wanted to do one bad enough, they probably could do it through a planned development. But again, it's not something that I just don't think we're gonna see them. I think it's gonna sit in the zoning code and really not get used. And if it's a way to relieve a little bit of angst from people, then maybe that's something that we remove. I don't know. I'm not, I could go either way on it, to be honest with you.
I just have one other question for Jeff, and that is if somebody does want to do like the PUD option that we were talking about, I assume are the fees significantly greater than they would be?
Yeah, we went through a planned
I'm
development process in 2023. And the applicant, I think the process, the fee to the planning commission is about $2,500. And it requires multiple meetings with the planning commission to discuss and make sure that it's going to work with the community. The planning commission has the ability to put in some conditions if necessary to approve the project.
That is significantly more than what's proposed in the new code. correct?
Yes.
I said it just drives the cost of housing up
Correct,
whenever we have big fees on things.
correct.
Come out. In or out?
No, I think it's really, I agree with what Michael said. I think it's a minor issue and a very rare occurrence.
So in or out?
So leave them in.
You want in or out? I'd say no, or take it out.
Yeah, because they can do it on their own.
Just flag lots are out.